Hello, my name's Niranjan, the host of Master of Your Crafts podcast, learning from leaders who are continuously inspired, passionate, and driven to align with their soul purpose, sharing their gifts to bring healing to others. The music is composed by Rebecca Everett. Today is episode number 130, and I had the pleasure of talking to Dr. Tom, a leader in integrative and functional medicine with over 23 years of experience, and is the founder of Charm City Integrative Health, called The Future of Medicine by a futurist, David Houle. A former acupuncture board chair and educator, he blends traditional healing with modern science to reduce inflammation, boost immunity, and improve overall health. He's featured widely in the media. Dr. Tom is known for making complex health concepts practical and accessible with a touch of humor. Enjoy the conversation. Thank you for watching and listening. Hello and welcome to Tom. How are you, Tom?
I'm doing great. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome. I'm glad that you're here, and I'm happy that you've carved out time to come here because you have a lot of fun stuff happening in your life. And I don't want to do
Yeah.
spoiler alert.
Wait, it's one of those things. It's like I don't know what's going to pan out. I'm super excited about all the opportunities. So
Yeah,
yeah, I would love to talk about it. But like until things are set in stone, you
all in
know.
due time. All
Yeah.
in due time. But until then, you're riding this beautiful wave
Yeah.
that didn't get created overnight.
No, no, no.
23 years of this pull push energy, pun intended,
Mhm.
and this whole knowledge expansion and the concreteness that you really enjoy. I guess the statistical part of all of
Mhm.
this, of
Mhm.
what functional medicine really does on a real tangible level. But based on our pre-conversation, there's elements of you that go in the little whimsical woo kind of space too.
I've got a tattoo on my arm that's an Okinawan proverb. And if we kind of like translate it into English where it's more readable, we would say when seeking advice, seek both the advice of a physician and a shaman,
Ah,
right? And literally it means half doctor, half shaman.
nice.
And I love that, because I know when we were kind of doing our pre-call, I was talking very like I need statistics, I need
Yeah.
studies, and but there is something so intuitive about East Asian medicine. There's something so natural about the whole thing that it doesn't need. The studies are great. I'll quote the
Mhm.
studies because they help get those really left brain people
Yeah.
behind it. But people want to know how you're going to make them feel, right? If you're going to make them feel
Ultimately.
better, they want to come to you. They want that experience, and that's a foot in each world, and you need that.
Absolutely. So you've done a lot to get here. You've seen a lot. You've
Mhm.
been through a lot from
Yeah,
the traditional lens of the Western world, but
yeah.
also really stepping into the Eastern world, which is ultimately where acupuncture really comes from, and
Hmm.
integrating those and making it palatable for you,
Yeah.
which makes it easier and more accessible for the people you want to connect with and the intentions around it. So, on that journey and on that path that you've been on, what do you believe about yourself? And do you feel it defines maybe an element, a portion, a fragment of who Tom is?
Yeah. I feel bad for people who like peak in high school. Yeah, like, and I'm not going to talk negatively about them, but they were the rock stars in high school, and it's such a small fishbowl,
Mm.
And I still feel like I'm 3 years away from 50, but 2.5, if we're being honest. And I feel like I just finished warming up. I just stretched. It's like, oh no, I've been training for this. Let's go.
Yeah.
And I don't think it could have happened any faster.
Mm.
I don't think, and I don't think I'm quite there yet. I see some big opportunities coming up, and I
Mhm.
could be wrong, but these
Mhm.
seem a little bit more sound than other things I've gotten very excited about. But within all of that, uh, the philosophies that make East Asian medicine so special, and you start to internalize them, and that takes a long time because every few years go by, and God, I've been saying this quote out of this ancient text for years and years and years, and all of a sudden it hits a little differently,
Right.
right? And the one that I'm stuck on now, so oddly, I only know it in Japanese, even though it comes out of a Chinese textbook. uh, but it is acupuncture is the expression of humanity. And
Mm.
it sounds so like, oh, what does that even mean? But it's the interaction of you and the patient. It's the interaction of you and the community that you're in. It's the interaction of the patient and the community. I get to express myself in the clinic, hopefully through the thing that I'm doing, the acupuncture treatment itself, or any other therapies that we do at our office. And that changes depending on who you're giving acupuncture to, or the conversation that you're having with that person, and that changes on that
Mhm.
daily. That person's a different person when they come in next time. You're a different person the next time you step into that treatment room.
Right.
So you have to honor that and carry it with you. And I think really trying to embody that has given me uh I want to say like a renewed joy, right? Like, oh,
Mm.
look, I found something in this medicine that's been there the whole time. It's not hidden, but now I'm looking at it differently, and it's really, God, even seeing my staff. I said this to my staff the other day. I'm like, I really like, in an appropriate way, I really love you guys. This has been so joyful to have people. 90% of them found me, right? They showed up.
Mm.
And secondly, they looked at the place and they go, oh, I got what you're trying to do here,
Mm.
right? Like, here I am. I have all these weird therapies that we do, and I'm saying weird in a very positive way. They're all very near and dear to my
Sure.
heart, and I made sure I vetted them as best I could, made sure they were going to be safe for people and effective.
Mhm.
And it took me years to kind of figure out, how do I tell somebody about this service that no one's ever heard of, right?
Mhm.
That's like, not to talk the business side of it, but that marketing. How do I make it
Sure.
sound like this is something that will be good for you? Because it is.
Yes.
And this staff came in and just hands down, they just got it.
Mm.
And they look, I said, look, I want this whole thing, anything outside of the treatment rooms where somebody's getting a practitioner in that room with them, I want it to be push button simple, because I want you to be actually genuinely concerned with the person you're talking to.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then I'm coming in and they're like, oh, I got to call so and so. Her sister had an operation the other day, and I'm just checking in. And I go, I could not I could not
Wow.
I could not find like I can't hire for that.
Right.
That's these people, and their humanity is resonating in the clinic, and it's not muting mine, it's not altering mine, it's just adding to that. And our clinic
Yeah.
has a vibe, and I like it brings me like so much joy to say that. And God, anytime we get all of us together, because there's 10 of us now, and we're not all there at the same time, and it's all there. There's like something something so tangible for me that I feel. I get very emotional about it. Maybe it's my Italian heritage, but I like I've cried, and people are like, what's wrong? I'm like, no, this is just too
Good.
beautiful, and I couldn't have planned this. I just
Mhm.
I just kind of let it happen. Even I've got a social media manager out in LA, and she flew out for my book launch, and that made my day because like she's not going to travel. But she came out and she saw the clinic and she goes, I can't, I don't know the last time I've been around this much love,
Mm.
and oddly enough, this is going to get super, super new agey and wishy-washy. She's got a friend who's a Reiki practitioner out in California with her.
Right.
And her friend, while she's sitting in my lobby, called and she goes, I just see you just bathing in this like
Yeah.
beautiful love and light. And she
Yeah.
goes, oh, I'm at Tom's clinic. And she goes, oh, so like everything you thought was right. And like they felt it,
Yeah.
I how, but I feel like I'm rambling now, but oh
It,
God, it just, I God, this is gonna be another love song to my staff. But they just make work a joy, and it's not something I would ever experience had I done a 9 to 5. It's not something I would have ever experienced had I not gone through the trials and tribulations and had the sleepless nights, and
Mhm.
had to grind even though I didn't want to. And there's no mansion and yacht yet, and that's not my goal. I just want to be comfortable. But the real thing was always, how many people can I impact? How many people can I help? And you put that out there enough, and then other people want to help you
Yeah.
do that,
Yeah.
and it's so incredible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So,
I am getting teary.
oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Wow. Almost made you cry in the first
Yeah,
5 minutes.
yeah. Oh,
Yikes.
it's yeah, I'm
Normally
there.
takes longer than that, but we're good.
You have
So,
my number coming in though.
so with that being said, then what does that mean about Tom?
There's this Japanese concept, ikigai, right?
Yeah.
And it's your life's purpose. It's what you're good at. It's what you're meant to do. It's this huge Venn diagram, and in the middle, all those things line up. What you're passionate about. And years ago, and I was like an idiot, 20-something-year-old talking to another colleague, and she said, no, this is it for you. And I go, oh, no, I don't know, I have no idea what the hell I'm doing. And it's just only in the last like couple of years has it really started to like manifest that way for me and make sense for me. And like, I have a friend that says you can't read the label of the jar you're inside. And right,
Mm,
we can't necessarily see how others view us, right?
absolutely.
And you hear it from patients, and I'm a firm believer that anybody that's in any kind of practice like this, you only hear the success stories. The ones that don't like you just don't come back. So like we're all these little like kings and queens in our own
Mm,
little like kingdoms, and
true.
we don't know about the ones that don't come back, right? So you
Yeah,
hear the good things, and you start puffing out your chest,
that's
and you're
right.
inflating your ego, and it's good. You're right. We don't want to sound incompetent, but we have to be very humble in this. But to see other people getting what I'm trying to put out there, it's fulfilling. It makes me feel like it's my life's purpose, and it's even I shared this before we kind of hit record. Um, my wife and I go to couples counseling now, and like we don't have a problem. We just go to check in with her, like like, oh, do we need to clear anything? No, let's tell you what's going on, and we're and I am almost in tears. I think I almost got the therapist to cry. She's like, remember when you were like worried about this and that, and like all of these things just kind of like colluded in my favor. It's like this call happened, and that happened, and that happened, and one of my amazing staff members just got a job that she really wants, and I'm like, on one hand, so sad, like,
Mm,
God, how are we going to replace you? And then my office manager goes, I'm just going to throw up an Instagram post. I'm like, no one looks at our Instagram. And then I'm flooded with resumes, like
Yeah.
professional resumes, a half an hour before this phone call. You know, whoa,
Yeah. Yeah.
that the universe isn't delaying anymore. It's like, no, we're going. Okay.
So
So that's a blessing. It's a blessing. I have no
it
other
is.
way to describe it.
It is. So you shared earlier about a little bit of a switch for you
Yeah.
in the last couple of years. Maybe it's integrating on a deeper level some of the philosophies,
I
some of
would
the
agree with
principles.
that. Yeah.
So from that, you've had a couple of years to digest it, and you're seeing the fruits of your labor come through beautifully.
Hmm. Hmm.
Has there been a switch consciously that you can share to what your calling is? Because you had a calling and intention before, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it ebbs and flows and it changes based on the environment, the
Hmm.
people, the feedback of others, and all those beautiful stories that you've just shared. But in the
Hmm.
last couple of years, do you think it's shifted? And what has it shifted that your calling is at this current time in your life? Because we know it changes, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's I would even say a refinement, right?
Mm.
I think when I was talking to my social media manager about all this going on, she's like, I normally you're like, she didn't say manic, but I would use the word manic. I'm very, oh my God, this is, she's like, you're really like rooted, you're really like grounded in this. And I'm like, you know, if this happens, it's the right thing to happen. And if it doesn't, it wasn't the right thing. And I'm very comfortable with that.
Mm.
And that was a big shift. It was, what is going to happen is going to happen, and what's not just won't. And
Right.
I think previous to these last couple of years, and yes, there's been tons of internal cultivation, meditation, breath work. I'm logging hours. um, and yes, it's given me a little bit less of that manic. Oh my God, this is amazing. But
Mm.
it's made the work that I'm doing, which I'm doing a lot, behind the scenes, and it's making it more intentional and more like, well, I'm going to say this rather than just spew this thing.
Yeah.
These are the steps I need to take to go in this direction. And what's the goal? The goal is to have the biggest impact. Okay, how do we do that? How do we do that rationally, knowing that I have a limited bandwidth with what I can do myself and what I can
Yeah.
ask my team to do? And I think over the last couple of years, internally, I've focused that down a little bit and settled into that. And then externally, those people that have been amplifying my message for so long, because I don't think anyone gets there by themselves,
Totally.
they've seen the shift and they're like, oh, this is not a panicked Tom. This is not a manic Tom. This is
Mm.
he's moving with intention.
Mm.
And in doing so, I think they're doing that too, and they'll still give me hell. I mean, I love them for that too. uh but yeah, they'll tell me if I'm like, hey, that looks stupid, don't do that,
Okay.
oh, thank you. All right, I didn't realize,
Yeah.
I thought it was funny,
Yeah.
but I think the team is honing in. I think even, my relationship with my family, my wife, my kids, you know, my daughter, is now in ninth. My older one's now in ninth grade. So she had a summer camp at
Mm.
the high school she's going to. And it was like a career camp. And they're like, all right, we're just going to Google your parents. And she goes, Dad, you
Everywhere.
you were everywhere and none of the other parents were. I'm like, how many of them were self-employed? How many of them are, recording their own podcast and being guests on podcasts and publishing books and,
Hmm. Hmm.
articles for,
Hmm.
other colleagues and, consumer articles.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's not me being better or worse than them.
Yeah.
This is the steps that get me to where I think I need to be.
Absolutely.
And, I think she got that even,
Good.
at 14 when, their frontal lobes are not working at all.
Yes.
But she seemed to go, oh, okay. Like
Yeah.
that makes sense. You're doing that intentionally.
Yes. And it probably drives home a little bit deeper on making the connection between what she's seeing externally within her friends and her her peers
Mhm.
versus your actual behavior that she sees at home. So
Yeah,
marrying the two
and I've
together.
seen that as well. A shift in the home behavior, right? When you're stressed and you're constantly going, the littlest thing sets you off. And even though I want to have fun and be happy, I can be an asshole. I really can, and I think when I'm stressed and I'm worried about something, one of the kids is bouncing off the walls. I'm not exactly like, hey, can you take a couple of breaths, maybe go outside, take a lap around the block. I'm like, sit down and shut up. Yeah, and it's why, because look, I only have
Yeah,
I believe the expression is so many spoons, you know.
that's right. That's right. But I just find it interesting, especially at a young age. I know I've been through it, and I'm sure a lot of people have, is marrying that external dialogue of
Hmm.
what's been projected to us. Your parents should be da 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 da, and they'll
Hmm.
have a description. And your grandparents should behave like that, your siblings should behave like that. But when you're in it and you're living it, you're breathing it, and you're being surrounded by these people all the time, and you marry that up to this narrative that's been projected,
Hmm.
it's a very different, it's a bigger aha moment for the individual. I know I had it.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, and I can't believe how many cheerleaders I've had,
Mm,
within all this. So they're seeing it, and there's a little bit of like, oh, they're proud of me.
yeah,
Yeah, and that's nice to feel.
it's beautiful. Yeah, it's great. So with this,
Yeah.
because it didn't happen overnight,
No.
for you and maybe for others, what do you feel have been some of the key attributes, some
Yeah.
intentions that you have
Yeah.
honed for yourself in really tweaking this so you can stay online and stay on target and stay on purpose, even though as that purpose may morph as time
Yeah.
goes along, as you do too. What are those attributes for you, do you think?
So I think one of the first ones, and I'm going to talk about an individual who was my mentor who passed away a couple of years ago.
Mm,
He didn't have the easiest life. He was basically told he was not getting out of Darwin, England,
mm,
mining town, northern England. And not only did he get out, he claimed 84 residencies in 12 different countries. He spent a good portion of his life in China and Japan learning acupuncture. He had a license in China, license in Japan, license in England, license in Australia, and then one here in the States.
ooh,
And he was going to clinics and scrubbing toilets and cleaning up, and just to learn from the best of the best. And then he brought that here as a gift, and
mm,
he shared it so freely with
mm,
anybody that would listen.
mm.
um and oh god, definitely gonna cry. uh I had the privilege of going to a seminar with someone who he introduced me to over 20 years ago, and I actually stayed at his house in Vancouver, studied with
Mm,
him,
mm.
have a really good friendship with him. But the person sitting next to me at the seminar was my dean, which is how I knew him. And my
Wow,
dean met him back in Japan.
wow.
And um asking my dean, who always seemed like, and he was a Londoner, very, very erudite, very, very well like put together, and he knew his stuff, and a genius as well. And clearly, I see what my mentor saw in him. Um, but my mentor's been gone probably about almost 3 years now, and Nigel said, like Peter always knew you were one of him, you were one of his.
Mm,
And he said towards the end of his life, he started to become a little bit more of a shut-in, because he didn't understand why people weren't like as into this as he was.
right.
Um but even I remember talking to him when I started taking over some of his classes and teaching. He said, look, teach to the one or two people that get it. It's like, that's
Yeah.
all that's ever going to get it. But it kind of made him sad towards the end of his life, where he really worked hard to get that information, and he wanted to make sure that it lived and it thrived, because
Mhm.
so many of these masters in China and Japan aren't around anymore.
Yeah.
Um, and when he passed, I even joked that, like, we're all Ronin now, right? We don't have a shogun. We're flying blind. We're on our own. But our community, our group is really tight. I've even chatted with like 3 or 4 of our close people,
Mhm.
even in the last 2 weeks. Um, but I feel that having that purpose, like, I have to carry on what he was trying to do,
Yeah.
and I have to do it in my own way, right? I'll never know the stuff as well as he does. I'm not speaking Japanese and Chinese. I'm not able to read it. I need it translated for me. Chewed up a little bit,
Sure. Sure.
pre-digested.
Yeah.
But that really solidified that, and to see his impact on so many people globally, right? So this is
Mhm.
during COVID that he passed, and we had an online funeral, and there was
Mhm.
there was over 20
Mhm.
different countries on that
Wow.
online funeral,
Wow. Wow.
and everybody talked about a different aspect of him,
Mhm.
right? So uh he used to say when he was dead, he wanted on his tombstone, all used up, right? And I think he might have accomplished that. And truthfully, that impact on people is what I'm trying to impress. Same thing happened with my grandfather. He was a pharmacist, and when he passed, well known in the community, he was a community anchor, right? Like one of the last non-CVS, non-chain
Mhm.
pharmacies. I had people that didn't speak English coming up to me at the funeral and say, "Do you know how much he
Wow.
talked about? Do you know how
Wow.
what he did for me?"
Yeah.
Right? This guy's a pharmacist. You come, you pick up your drugs, you leave, and no, 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 no. He would like give me a discount because he knew I wasn't working, or yeah, he would put me in touch with somebody that would help me out when I didn't have the money to pay for the doctor, and or like he'd take a look at
Mhm.
something and go, "Look, I'm not a doctor, but yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and really foster that sense of community." And somebody came in into my clinic the other day, and he goes, every time I walk in here, it's like coming to see an old friend. And it
Mhm.
it it felt so good. I mean, the person had been coming in a couple of weeks. It wasn't even that long.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
not necessarily me, it's the whole team, but it's
Right.
the other patients in the waiting area.
Mhm.
We don't feel like a medical clinic, and we don't feel I'm certainly not zen and quiet all the time like a regular acupuncture clinic. I'm loud.
Mhm. Mhm.
But there's hopefully the joy and the passion comes through in that.
Nice.
And the staff gets it.
Yeah.
Even we do have quiet acupuncturists if you
I'm
want
sure.
them.
I'm sure.
But they still tolerate me.
I'm sure. What do you feel is the alignment and the connection? Because there's ultimately a beautiful thread that
Yeah.
ties through, be it your mentors, your dean, your peers, your colleagues, your
Yeah.
family, your grandfather. There's a thread that really hones in and that you're pulling and you're following. As to
I
your children, no doubt, what is that thread? So what is essentially the intentions behind this beautiful honed in skill that you've mastered of acupuncture? What is it?
I don't think there's a mastery. I'll say that first. I think you just keep going, and you keep refining, you keep polishing the stone,
Yeah,
and you get further ahead, right? Even the word sensei, that doesn't mean master. That means one that came before,
right.
right? So I might have more experience. I might be able to look at something a little bit differently than somebody who's newer. Um,
However, I must
yeah,
add, if I
yeah,
may,
sure.
even the polishing of the stone
Mhm.
comes with a technique and it
Yeah,
comes
yeah,
with a finesse and a poise that is learned over is
yeah.
learned.
Yeah, and
So,
yeah, I think I had the right influences that actually made that happen. But within that, uh, I think the desire has to be there, right? You
mhm,
have to be pointed in the right direction, and yeah, you got to do the work. But absolutely, the I keep coming back to this term humanity, and I I used to be into the, like, I use the term biohacking. I really like that. And I'm like, well, these guys really just seem to just care about themselves.
Mm,
Right. And, like if we look at it, and I don't, we've had such a positive conversation. I don't want to say negative things, but this group of people is kind of like douchey, like
mm,
tech bros, like,
mm.
oh, look, I intermittent fast, I do that. And all of those techniques are great, but they're not for just one type of person. They should be used by everybody. So when we talk about humanity, I don't want to be biohacked. I don't want to be optimized. I want to be the most human I can be.
Yeah.
And I think, you asked me what was that switch. That's when I started to back away from that term biohacking. And like, we've got a lot of toys that biohackers like at our office,
Mhm,
but I want them to be
mhm.
accessible to everybody. I want them to serve humanity. And that took a lot of soul searching too. Like, what is it I
Mm.
want? I want to be human. And
Yeah.
sometimes that's ugly, sometimes that's messy, sometimes it's painful. But there's a certain joy. I remember back when I read a lot of Buddhism, they would say it's such an honor to be incarnated as a
Absolutely.
human being.
Absolutely.
And we
Yes.
forget about that, especially when we got a
Yeah.
parking ticket, or we're going through
That's it.
some horrible loss, or there's a breakup, or
Yeah.
you had a trauma. But when we pull back and we look at that, it is like I say this so often. Like, I don't know if there's a higher power. I don't want to pretend like I know. I don't want to say I'm atheist, because I'm probably wrong there too. Yeah, yeah, I want to be vague. But at the same token, wouldn't it be so much easier for
Mhm.
none of this to happen? So, like, is there a purpose? Well, there's got to be a reason, right? There's got to be some. I don't know. I'm not enlightened. I don't know if that thing actually exists for me in this lifetime, but there's got to be a reason this happens,
Mhm.
right? And there's got to be
Mhm.
a reason that we're having this conversation right now.
Yeah.
Whether or not I'll ever understand that, at least not in this body, I don't think is the debate. It's how do I try and do whatever this is the best I can, and I'm a human, so I'm going to try and be as human as possible.
Hmm. But even on that, if I was to follow that thread,
Yeah,
the def your quest for what if there isn't anything and we're just here,
yeah,
in an essence, then it's a similar question to I'm just going to do human. What is that?
yeah. I guess I answered a question with a question.
Like,
And I think that's so individualized too, right? Because my expression of that is not going to be your expression of that.
100%.
And I think, I think the key things is understand that we're all trying to figure that out, right? And we shouldn't persecute others because what their definition isn't the same as mine.
Yeah.
And really, we need to defend those who might be being persecuted for
Sure.
expressing their humanity, so long as it doesn't hurt
Yeah.
other people. Yeah,
Well, even at that,
yeah,
I'm going to lean into this space of if they choose to do that, the bigger test and the bigger influence is for us to observe it
yeah.
and to perhaps take the higher road
Mhm.
with other skills, tools, and awareness to support in allowing everybody to be on their own journey.
Yeah,
Ultimately, that's it. You're on your journey, I'm on mine, and 8 billion people on the planet are all doing their own thing. So, allowing their life, that's a gift on this planet,
it
to,
definitely is.
to really unfold as they wish for it to do, or the bigger term probably is as they feel worthy for it to
Mm,
unfold.
mm. Yeah, that worthiness is an interesting one.
It's massive.
Yeah, it's uh, I do think there's a graceful way to feel that worthiness, and it's very different than the word entitlement, isn't it? You know,
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think
Absolutely.
there's something there, and God, I feel like I feel like I should be stoned having this conversation.
Which also, if we're really gonna throw things in the mix, then I'm gonna add the word privileged.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
How privileged am I to be able to have this conversation with you, and for us
absolutely.
to be birthed here to have this conversation and relationship, to be able to walk out in nature, and all of this privilege of being alive to a certain degree without that going too far out there. But if it does, it does. That's cool too. It's it's really honoring the sweetness of the gifts that we really have
Mm.
and being in a place of holding those in such a sacred place in our journey for us. That's all that matters.
You know, I think that has been kind of that refinement of thought recently.
Mm.
You know, what really matters, how am I doing this in that true expression where I acknowledge that, you know, look, the people that come through my office, yes, they pay a fee to be there. That's how I eat and things like that. But I'm privileged to be able to take care of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, like they chose to come to me,
Yep.
or just to the clinic, or you know, they're seeing, you know, they're doing services that don't need a practitioner, but they're still choosing to come to our place, and they're choosing to, you know, have that experience in our office, you know.
It really is. I mean, we that word privilege has been thrown around, especially over the last couple of years, 3, 4,
Mhm.
5 years, so heavily. And I think it's lost its true meaning.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, you know, a lot of people are really focusing on the negative side of that. Look, these people have privilege. I'm a straight middle-aged white male. I
Yeah,
can't even tell you how much privilege I probably have that I'm unaware of.
right.
But that's the negative side of it. But the
Yeah,
ability to be able to do those things, you know, to be able to, you know, do things that you're passionate about. God, I feel
yeah.
so bad for people that are punching a clock and just waiting to retire,
Hmm.
you know, to do something that, like, oh wow, this is really cool. Even when somebody's suffering, oh, I can be part of helping ease that,
Hmm.
you know. Oh, that's not something that, you know, 24-year-old me getting out of acupuncture school I think even contemplated.
Right.
It's like, this is gonna be cool, I'll do this. Yeah, yeah, you know. And now it's like, no, this is you're doing something, even when you're not getting it right,
Yeah.
even when you're messing up, you're still in this, you know, really state of privilege. And it's so huge.
And I want to circle back to something you said earlier in terms of a sense of responsibility.
Mhm.
Because ultimately, what I imagine with you, just because I feel it too with my clients that I have who come and work with me, they come to the table and they're handing you their pain,
Yeah, yeah,
their challenges, and a fragment of themselves, they're handing it over willingly.
yeah.
And
Like,
for us
please
to
help
be
me.
able,
Yeah.
exactly, and for us to be able to receive it and really manage that in such a tender way because it's another part of somebody, somebody's
Mhm.
soul, somebody's pain and suffering that they've kept so deep within them. And peeling back the layers of doing that, be it in an acupuncture or be in an energetic conversation, which is what I do, it's it's a huge responsibility. And you talked about the responsibility from your mentors and your dean and from your peers of feeling that ownership and responsibility to be able to pass on this message moving forward. It's equally the same when somebody walks through your door.
Yeah, you know, and that, like, when we're focusing on it like this, the weight that that feels like, you know, that's not an easy lift.
No.
That is wow, that's bigger than I thought it was. And you know, I don't want to think, I don't want anyone to think that, like, if I'm joking in clinic or I'm being goofy, that that is
Yeah,
not still present. That is just
absolutely.
me trying to be relatable and funny.
Well, what we know for sure is it lightens the load, right? So when
Mhm.
people are in that position of deep pain and suffering and challenges, there needs to be the opposite of energy that has got to be presented for them to receive and welcome it in. Because if it
Yeah.
is all serious all the time, there's going to be that natural door and resistance and barrier and thing that's not going to allow that to come in, that energy, that frequency, that understanding, if you will, because we're so cerebral that mind is just overtaking us all the time,
Yeah.
where we don't get to relax and just breathe. So that humor does the same thing. You do it in your clinic. I definitely do it on my calls, which is hilarious sometimes, and sometimes not.
Hmm.
Nevertheless, it's the opportunity we get to be able to play with this beautiful thing called polarity.
Hmm. Hmm.
Ultimately, that's it, right? So I find it so interesting how you do it in your clinic and what you've learned and the space in which you deliver it and how you've built this beautiful community to support all these people. Not only the people coming in, but your staff too. Like how supported are they? What a gift that is.
I had my one of my staff said, You know how much I love it here. I've never lied to you."
Oh, wow.
And I was like, "Oh, well, okay, you're honest." And she goes, "No, no, 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 no. If I have a problem, I don't feel like I need to make up an excuse.
Mm,
I feel like I can tell you that problem honestly,
nice.
right? If I can't get childcare,
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you that. I'm not going to tell you my dog died. I'm not going to, make up a story. I'm going to be straight with you because I feel like you treat me as another human being."
Right.
And she told that to my social media manager, and that nearly broke my social media manager.
Mm,
Because the one thing I got out of being, raised, let's say, a recovering Catholic is do unto others like you'd have done to you. And I
absolutely.
don't think enough of us are actually living that. I think,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be more complicated. We don't have to write out tens of thousands of laws. If you think of that
Yep.
before you
Yep.
do something, you're probably not gonna, you might still hurt somebody. You might accidentally go do something you don't mean to do, but it's not the intention. And I think
Right.
intention weighs a lot into that.
It does. It does. But it's also coming from a place of compassion. It's
Hmm.
coming from that heart. We have
Yeah.
to have compassion in order to be able to create that space for somebody to feel that safety.
It's funny, and I told somebody this the other day. This is in my top favorite. I said I don't read Chinese. Uh, One of my favorite Chinese characters is the character for compassion, right? So
Mm.
anytime we have an emotion, right, they put the heart character in it, the heart radical.
Right.
Above it is literally a picture of a man in a box. It's a man in prison,
Mm.
right? And we think, well, it's easy to have compassion for people I love and care about, but having
Mhm.
that compassion for like a criminal,
Mm.
somebody that might have done something wrong, is
Mhm.
really what that character's showing. And I think that's, I keep coming back to this word humanity, but that's where we're really human. I get you at a human level. I may not
Yeah.
agree with what you've done. You might have done
Yeah.
something horrible,
Yeah.
but you're still human,
That's right.
you know?
That's right. Yeah. And again, going down that path of we're all here for a purpose.
Mhm.
Well, I say that. I don't think you did, but we're here for a purpose, but we're here
I
for a
don't know.
reason,
Like
which is a
I'm
gift.
still, verdict is still out, kind of thing. What's all this
We're-
about?
There's something here that needs to be unfolded, and we get this beautiful gift to be here.
Hmm. Hmm.
So,
And we all get weighed down with the daily activities and going through the motions and the grind and all that. And sometimes we forget about that. We forget about that for a long time.
absolutely.
And I think even just in the last few weeks, I'm starting to go, oh, that's right, that's there.
Mhm.
And yes, it's very important, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what's next for Tom? Other than all the
Wow.
deliciousness that's just happening.
I want to keep going with this, and I still hear my mentor's accent in the back of my head sometimes, and I think I'm doing him proud.
Mm.
But really, ultimately, I want to make sure that the field of East Asian medicine, acupuncture, Chinese medicine, whatever terms you want to call it, are healthy and alive and being practiced as close to their true intention.
Mhm.
And some of that is getting new people to become acupuncturists, and some of that is making sure that the people that should be getting acupuncture are getting acupuncture. And I realize that theme throughout things, but now I want to use my own platforms to do that.
Yeah.
I did it through state boards and lobby groups and
Right.
teaching, but to have some direct effect, and even leaning into like, hey, we got an intern from a college that had these bachelor's in professional health sciences and all these different concentrations, and it's like they didn't have one in acupuncture, but it's not a heavy lift for me to put two classes together for you, and those can be taught. Now you have a undergrad program for East Asian medicine that will
Nice.
feed graduate programs that will keep the field live with new talent and excited young practitioners that I
Yeah.
was, and hopefully leave the field better than I found it. I mean, that's a
Beautiful.
Boy Scout thing, right?
Yeah.
Leave the forest cleaner than you went in. But yeah, I was a Boy Scout for a minute. But all of these things, it's funny how they come back and influence you. Even the Boy Scout joke wasn't a joke. So there were little memories that come up. They bubble up to the surface when they're supposed to, right?
Yeah, they do. But the metaphor is still the same.
Yeah, it is. It
The,
is.
the metaphor and the intention of we're here as a gift.
Yeah.
So if we're here as a gift on this planet, and it's so precious and it's so tender and we have everything accessible to us, then why would we want to spoil it on the way, in or out?
Yeah.
Yeah, I could talk to you for way longer than what I have done already. So yeah, I'm
Thank
excited.
you.
Yeah, I'm excited about what's coming down the pipes for you. But most
Yeah.
importantly, I'm very grateful and honored
Well, I,
to be able
I've loved
to
this conversation.
hear your story, hear your feedback, and make you cry almost. But
I,
have such a
I got a
great
little moist. I got a
conversation.
little moist.
It's the humidity in the air. That's what it is. Um, so I'm so grateful, Tom, for you
Oh,
sharing. So thank you for
I
being on the show.
thank you. I'm so grateful for you having me on this.
You're
I
welcome.
told you in the pre-interview how much I loved your voice. And that might be your secret weapon right there. I mean, you could definitely do some tears very easily. But I have
Perhaps.
no doubt you're absolutely skilled and you're living your life the way you're supposed to too. And it's really great to be able to interact with somebody that's gets that, right? I mean,
True.
there's so few of
That
us that
counts.
do, but the ones that
Yeah,
do, when they find each other, it's
it's a
fun.
gift.
It's amazing. It is a gift.
It is. It is. Beautiful. Thank you for those kind words, Tom.
Thank you.
Until next time. I'm Naranjan, and you've been listening to Master of Your Crafts podcast. Please subscribe, rate, and review, and join me next week for another episode. Thank you for listening.